You guys ready? Good morning. We have quorum, and I would call the 13th meeting of the Scarborough Community Council to order. Welcome to all members of the Community Council, and of course to the members of the public and the media. We acknowledge the land we're meeting is on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the William Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. I understand from the clerk that we have one new item. It has been circulated. May I have a motion to add the items of new business to the agenda? I believe that it's a motion by Councillor Lai.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're good? Do I have a motion to add the item of new business to the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If so, please indicate the item's numbers and the nature of the interest. Since that none of you have, I have. I'm declaring a conflict of interest on item SC 13.12. As my vice chair is not in attendance today, I will be passing the gavel to one of my colleagues at that point in time. And the nature of the conflict is that my daughter lives around, and my son-in-law live around the corner from the said stop sign. Okay, let's have a quick rundown of the agenda. We have two timed items for 10 o'clock, and that is SC 13.1, 1000 Ellesmere Road, Common Elements Condominium Applications Final Report. Councillor Thompson, 10 o'clock? Sure. All right. Item number SC 13.2, 23 Glen, Watford Drive, zoning amendment and draft plan of subdivision application final report, and that's at 10 a.m. Councillor Lai. SC 13.3, 2181 Lawrence Avenue East zoning bylaw amendment application preliminary report. Counselor Thompson.
I'd like to hold that.
Okay. SC 13.4, 27 Lawrence Avenue East zoning bylaw amendment drafts plan of subdivision application preliminary report. Counselor Thompson. SC 13.5, 860 Pharmacy Avenue, 9 to 40 Craigton Drive, and 1 Rannock Street, official plan amendment application preliminary report. Counselor Thompson. SC 13.6, 4620 Finch Avenue East, zoning bylaw amendment application preliminary report. Counselor Lai.
I'd like to move staff recommendation.
All those in favor? Opposed? Pass. SC 13.7, 140 Grangeway Avenue, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment application preliminary report. Counselor Ainsley.
I'm moving the recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passed. SC 13.8, 4097 Lawrence Avenue East and 19197 to 201 Galloway Road zoning amendment application preliminary report. Counselor Ainsley.
I'm moving the recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passed. SC 13.9, 1625 Military Trail and 6000 Kingston Road official plan amendment and zoning amendment applications preliminary report. Councilor McKelvey. Councilor has asked that we defer it for the next meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? Passed. SC 13.10, traffic control signal, Stanford Road and Seminoff Street. Councilor Crawford.
I'll move staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passed. SC 13.11, stop and prohibition, Kitson Drive. Councilor Crawford.
I believe I have an amendment for that I'd like to put up.
Can we put it up,
I'd like
please?
to move. Just changing the hours. Oh, there it is.
Any questions of the mover?
I'm moving it.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Passed.
Oh, I think as amended, would it be?
All those in favor of the item as amended? All those in favor? Opposed? Passed. Councilor Ainsley, as I have a conflict, will you please take the chair?
All right, item number 12, always stop control review, Innismore Crescent and Inniswood Drive at Inniswood Drive at Innisdale Drive. All in favor? Recorded vote. Councillor Crawford, Councillor Ainsley, Councillor Lai. Opposed?
I think we are out of step here, Mr. Chair. I'd like to hold that.
You want to hold number 12? Okay.
SC 13, thank you, Councilor Ainsley. SC 13.3, parking prohibition, Gray Street. Councilor Thompson.
Move the staff recommendation.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. SC 13.14, traffic calming measures, 13-kilometer speed limit and U-turn prohibition, Corinthian Boulevard. I think we do, I have an amendment to. Okay. Any questions?
You removing those two, number 2 and 3, is that correct?
And I'm replacing them.
It was to read. Can we hold it? Because I can't read it from now. Can we have it?
You want to hold down?
Well, I like to read what is in there.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
well, You got a questions of what's up there?
She wants to hold it down, Mr. Chair, to read it, so.
You want a copy? Counselor Thompson, I thank you for the, but, I mean, I'm just asking Counselor Lai if she wants a copy of it.
I'd like a copy to read it, please,
Okay.
before I vote for it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I'll hold it in my name. Not a problem, Mr. Thompson, Councilor Thompson, thank you. SC 1315, traffic control signals on McGelvin Avenue and Greenspan Road, McGelvin Avenue and Malvern Street. Councilor Lai.
I move for staff recommendation.
All those in favor? Opposed, passed. SC 13.16, traffic control signal review, Lawrence Avenue and Meadowvale Road. Councilor McElvey, there is a speaker, and we're going to hold it in my name. SC 13.17, permanent closure of untraveled portion of Progress Avenue abutting the north side of 940 Progress Avenue. Councilor Ainsley.
I'll move the recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passed. SC 13.18, snow plowing, sidewalk snow plowing. Councilor Ainsley.
I'll move the recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Passed. We added one item, SC 13.19, Councilor Lai's motion revising definition of excluded area of Chapter 925 permit parking. Have you had an advanced circulation of this? Councilors? Councilor Thompson? Okay.
I have it.
Can we put it up, please? Any questions of the mover?
Yeah, what are we trying to do?
Councilor Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilor Lai, just wanted to
Well-
understand what you're trying to do with this motion.
What I'm trying to do is that I've heard from many community members that there's a need for on-street parking permits in Ward 23. So currently, Toronto, East York, and area of Etobicoke, York, and North York have, some areas of Scarborough allow on-street permit parking. And I just wanted to see whether we can make it a little bit equal to allow some of the street in my ward that has on-street permit parking. That's basically the rationale.
And is this a solution because there's not enough parking in the driveways of the residents in your ward?
Well, I think it would be a temporary solution for that. I don't know what's the long-term solution, but at least some of the community members come to me and express their concern about that.
So this request is to do something temporary?
From some part of the streets in my ward, not the whole ward.
Right.
Just,
So
you
the
know, for
boundary
those,
area, the 401 South,
Yeah.
Midland? Yes.
well, that is my ward. I think mostly it's in the northern part of my ward, in the Morningside Heights, and I think there's a lack of parking in their area, and that's what they.
I see. Those are my questions, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Crawford, you have questions?
Yes, Council, have you consulted with staff on this? And we'll be asking the questions afterwards, but have you consulted with staff on this potential motion and the impacts of that?
Yes, we have.
And you have,
Yes, we have. And staff recommended that we bring forward a motion to include some part of the area
Okay.
to allow that.
okay, I'll ask staff that question. And you probably aren't aware, but when you talk, so there's no permit parking in your ward at all at this point?
Well, and there's no permit parking, on-street permit parking in my ward at all.
Okay, thank you.
Question for me. The way that's written, it seems that you've been saying the whole ward, and you're saying that you want part of it.
Well, some of the area, not the whole ward.
The area bounded by 401 to the south, by Midland Avenue to the west, by Steeles to the north, and by Rouge River to the electric power. That sounds like the whole ward.
Well, we were being told, staff recommended that but then I'm not intending to do the whole ward like that. But in order that, then I will come back with which area that they have petitions, allow this whole process to go forward, and then not the whole ward.
How
no.
will that affect the snow plowing? I mean, like we all share the same, Scarborough is all the same. We have Widrow snow clearing, we have snow plowing, and if you got permit parking, you're going to be getting more calls about my snow wasn't clean versus, people parking on the street.
Well, I don't have an answer for that. Maybe that should be a question for staff.
Sorry, but you're putting the motion forward. What does it mean you don't have an answer for it?
Well, we have consulted the staff, and the staff advised us that we can try to do this for now, and then
But, Councillor-
we'll put forward what are the streets that we wanted. It's not the whole ward we wanted it, no.
But Councillor, the way that this has been written, you asked for carte blanche for the whole ward.
Well, but we have to start doing something in order that we can actually do it for some
I
part
can
of the ward.
understand if you're coming in with one or two streets, but asking for the whole ward, you're going to have difficulties with snow plowing and people being able to go down the street. Some of your streets, we share the same common elements. Some of your streets will be, they would be not wide enough. Are you asking for one side of the street to be permit parking or both sides?
Well, this is to allow the process to
Well,
kick in.
that's not-
It's not for every street, no. This is not what my
This
intention
is
is
not what
for.
you're asking here. You're asking us to give you a carte blanche.
Well, but staff has suggested that we need to open up this permit parking in the ward in order that we can actually put forward some of the streets to go in there.
That's not the way that it's written. That's my difficulty with it. Okay. Quick question, is there anybody in the room that might want to make a deputation on this? Okay. Questions of staff? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the motion seems, as the chair was trying to ascertain as part of his questions, it seems that it's asking for the entire area. And I heard what Councillor Lai has indicated, but how, because it appears that staff have been involved in terms of drafting this motion. What's the intent of this motion?
Through the chair, the intent of this motion is actually to remove the area in Ward 23 from the exclusion zone in the chapter of parking. What this will allow us to do is then to, on select streets and select locations, conduct polling to see if residents are supportive of permit parking.
I see. Okay, so that's helpful with respect to the description that Councillor Lai had provided then, so just a little bit more detail. And so help me to understand then, please. Have you looked into Councillor Lai's area in terms of determining why there is this need for additional parking? Are we having more rooming houses? Are we having more facilities where people are contravening our rules? And are we then going to be complicit by helping to actually create a situation where our own rules are not being followed because we're now creating an opportunity where more people will be parking on street?
So through the chair, this is in reaction to a number of complaints we've received from the ward area complaining about lack of parking and lack of storage, but we don't have any analysis to support, a connection between rooming houses or any other matters.
Is that something that you'd look into before bringing, obviously, a report forward? That's one part of my question. So component to the question is, what did you mean by storage? I mean, are you saying that, so because I find lots of people, for example, have their garage is actually used for storage, not a vehicle, but for other things, and then they'll say, I don't have enough room to park a vehicle on my property, and you will ask, what about the garage? And they'd say, I use the garage for something else. So what do you mean by storage?
So through the chair, this is really for additional vehicles in addition to the number of parking spots. So where houses or residents may have additional vehicles in and above what would be able to be stored on their property.
Okay, that's helpful. Do you think that it would be helpful for you and your team to analyze the intent with respect to some of the permit requests that would come as, if we were to allow this, to determine whether or not people are actually setting up rooming houses, because that's a big issue in my ward, suspect that may be a big issue in other wards as well, and then the impact that it actually has on snow clearing on street. I actually have photos which I can submit to you later on, where streets in my ward are basically difficult for other residents to navigate because people park cars around. And yes, we don't enforce the rules as much as we should. So it creates a huge problem with respect to on-street snow clearing. I'm just wondering if you have considered that as an issue.
Through the chair, the connection to rooming houses and on-street parking would not be under the purview of transportation services. We're looking at this from a aspect of, we've received requests. And
Yes.
we're looking to see if we can accommodate those requests through permit parking. With regards to the concerns over winter, yes, parking, on-street parking does have some negative impacts to the operation of our winter services, snow clearing. It will also then result in those areas not being eligible for windrow service.
Right, right.
So that is something, but that being said, there are numerous areas of permit parking in the city where we do still provide regular winter services, snow clearing. So it is a hindrance, but it is something we do in other areas.
Fair enough. Could you then help me in terms of the clarification and/or understanding? The downtown core, streets are narrower for the most part in the residential area, is that correct?
Through the chair, that is generally correct.
Right. And so the challenge with respect to snow clearing operations not the same as it is, for example, in Scarborough, because many streets don't get their snow cleared because you have on-street parking because of the fact that a lot of residents don't actually have the capacity to park on their own property. Would that be correct?
Sorry, through the chair, could you repeat that? Sorry.
Sure, I can. I was just basically asking, some streets in the downtown core are rather narrow, and the on-street parking permission that we provide is related to the fact that although the streets are narrow, some properties associated with those narrow streets, they don't have the ability to park actually on their own property. Some people park on pads, which we allow in the downtown core, we don't allow in Scarborough, because of the fact that you have much wider expanded geographical area and so on. Would that be correct?
So through the chair, that is correct. There are different priority levels for permit parking applicants. So applicants who don't have parking on their private property are, priority one when it comes to setting those areas, which many are in the downtown. And then people with additional vehicles are also able to apply if there's enough capacity within that permit parking area.
Right. So I really wanted to draw a comparison, though, because oftentimes, just loosely, people say things like, well, you allow it downtown, how come you don't allow it in Scarborough? You have to look at the geographical and the sort of the landmass and landscape and the area differential before you kind of surmise that just because we have a specific area in the downtown, a specific area in Scarborough, that they're one and the same. They're not one and the same. Would that be would that be something that you would concur?
Through the chair, there are similarities and differences
Correct.
between the operations of those streets in downtown and in Scarborough, and it would certainly be something we take into consideration when we look at, the individual location.
Right. And just to my final question, Mr. Chair, you talked a little bit about what is in your purview in terms of your professional responsibility, road work and assessment and so on. And then you, based on the question I asked about rooming house, you're saying we wouldn't be looking at that. But do you not think that should be adjunct or adjacent to the consideration as part of a report that would be brought forward that looks at providing on-street parking and then looking at the impact of rooming houses and those conditions? Would that not be prudent to actually have
Last
that
question,
information?
Councillor.
Through the chair, I would not be able to comment on that link between rooming houses and on-street parking.
That's difficult, eh?
Any other questions of staff? Councillor Lai.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to ask staff, I understand there are some areas in Scarborough that has this on-street permit parking. Can you explain that?
Through the chair, there are some very limited areas in Scarborough that do have on-street permit parking. Very small majority of those in Ward 20.
About in Ward 20?
Yes,
And
that's
that-
correct.
And do you have any, have you been encountering a lot of problem with snow clearing on those streets?
Through the chair, I'm not aware, at this time, I don't have that information, but that's something we could certainly look into. It does certainly create some challenges just with regards to the space in the right-of-way and the ability to clear snow.
Thank you.
Councillor Crawford, questions of
Well,
staff?
Just to follow up on that with regard to the streets that have exemptions. How many streets in my ward have exemptions? You aware? I think it's around 12, 13, I believe. No more?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of the exact number at this time. but I
Limited.
can
And
get
they came into being really after amalgamation. Again, the west part of Scarborough, closer to the beaches. Some of the streets are similar in size to beaches, streets that have permit parking. That's probably why the exemptions were put in a number of years ago.
Through the chair, yes, they do resemble streets closer
Okay.
to the beaches.
And I don't know if you may not have been around long enough, but they do all have the opportunity to go to permit parking. A number of the streets have gone through the process. Do you know the results of those processes and whether or not those streets actually wanted permit parking?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of how many streets have been, have received polling and have gone through the permit parking ask and what the results of those are in Scarborough.
That probably wasn't a fair question because I do know there were none actually. They have gone through the process, but they chose not to have permit parking. Thank you.
Anybody else? I have a couple of questions of staff. How many calls did you get in the last snowfall for withdraw clearing after you had done you went through the areas?
Through the chair, I don't have those figures here right now, but I can certainly get those for you after the meeting.
If I remember a conversation we had, you said something like on 800. Would I be misquoting you? I could be incorrect.
I don't have the information
Okay.
right now, I'm sorry.
Can I ask how many calls you had from my ward for withdraw clearing?
Through the chair, there were a number of calls we received. I don't have that exact figure.
And were those calls because people had parked on the street and you couldn't, some of them, and you couldn't get in to clean the withdraw?
Through the chair, I can't say what took place and what the underlying cause was for those issues.
How many difficulties do you have about cars being parked on the street overnight and you can't get in to clean the withdraw? How big is the difficulty?
Through the chair, it is definitely a difficulty for all of our snow clearing operations. It does present a number of challenges where they can't get close enough to driveways and other things, but I do not have a quantity or volume of how prevalent that is.
You wouldn't be aware of the number of rooming houses reported in Councillor's Lie area, would you?
Through the chair, I'm not familiar with that number.
Are we aiding the people that are actually, we have, these Scarborough is single-family dwellings, and you can have one or two boarders or a basement apartment. Are we assisting people that want to convert their houses into rooming houses by allowing them to park on the street?
Through the chair, I can't comment on that.
All right, my last question to you is this: how difficult would it be for you to clean snow once you have permit parking? I mean, downtown, they don't have any snow clearing, they don't have any sidewalk clearing, and everybody's wants sidewalk clearing. And I mean, how difficult would it be up here? Not only sidewalk, street, withdraw. What difficulties would it possess, and how much would it cost you extra to do that?
Through the chair, I can't comment on the specific difficulties, but it would pose challenges. As I stated earlier, these areas that do receive permit parking would no longer be eligible for windrow service based on our windrow service criteria. We would have to evaluate if there's any impacts on the sidewalk operations, but at this time, I don't believe there would any. I don't have a cost for what that cost differential would be.
Any further questions of staff? Speakers? Councillor Crawford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I do want to thank the councillor for bringing this to our attention. I think it's a very important issue that we all deal with across Scarborough. I know I have a lot of challenges with street parking in my area, and I think this is something that outside of this, I think we need to come back and really look at this maybe on a Scarborough-wide perspective as opposed to just one ward. because I think there are challenges, and I don't know whether or not permit parking is the right answer or not. I do have the luxury, if you want to call it, of I think it's about 12 to 15 streets in my ward who have the ability to put in permit parking. And I have gone through the process over the last number of years, formal process with the residents, and each time I've gone through that, and when you look at it, recognizing there are pros and cons. I can get into a lot of the pros, but there are also a lot of cons. But I do know when the residents have gone through that process, seeing and weighing it all out, whether or not they're going to be spending X amount of money a year, whether or not they can actually get it's no guarantee that you're going to be able to get a permit parking, even if you have permit parking on your street in front of your house. But I do know in that process, they all have decided that permit parking is not the answer for their particular street, and they've declined that. I don't know what that doesn't resolve the issues. It doesn't deal with what is happening. And hence why I have been hesitant to feel that permit parking is the answer. We do need to figure out what that is, and we have the 3-hour parking. Is it going to 12-hour parking? Are there other opportunities or options to do? I'm not sure of that, but I think that warrants us moving forward on looking at this more, as I said, holistically for all of Scarborough. But hence, on that, I unfortunately won't be able to support this because I think it's just a bigger issue that we need to be looking at, and the ward-by-ward aspect of this, I just do not think it's going to. There's going to be more challenges if we go down this road. I'd rather just pull it back a bit and maybe look at this in a proper way to have a report coming to us that weighs all the options and all that, so we can be more informed before we move down this process to make a decision. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, my colleague is actually attempting to respond, obviously, to the, I guess, call from some members of her community, and that's fine. It's a matter that we have been struggling with for some time with respect to on-street permit parking in Scarborough. We know that some families or children have moved back home and they bring their vehicles with them, and there's a need for space to park their vehicles and so on. And it's something that we want to try to see how we can deal with that. However, the challenge that we see currently far outweighs, obviously, that as a desire with respect to some who want to have on-street parking. We know that there are many people, actually, who are utilizing their space in a way that generates revenues for them, and then that brings in the need for more parking. In fact, just 2 days ago, I had a fire in a property in my ward. The landlord since 2000 have been basically chopping up the building into smaller units, and when we respond to it, he puts it back and then he changes again, and it brings more people to live in and so on. And so there's been an issue with respect to on-street parking there, a variety of people with vehicles. And so the impact, though, is greater than this sort of, short-term measure of simply having some on-street parking. We've had unsafe conditions where people are parked their vehicles on the street, and the snow plows have been unable to actually clear a good portion of the street, and it narrows the street. It creates conflict with respect to people traversing and trying to move around and so on. And so I'm not adverse to taking a look at this, but I do think that to implement as it's being asked today is not the right method or the right approach. Certainly we'll leave it up to staff to come forward at a later date with some ideas in terms of how we can take a look at this issue. But to those who wish to simply compare or to say, well, we have some area in Scarborough right now where there's on-street parking is permitted. I know the only area that I'm aware of is in Councillor Crawford's area, and that was brought in by Councillor Ashton before Councillor Crawford was a member of council and so on. And as we've heard from Councillor Crawford, that although it's available, some people on the streets have declined. I'm not at 5 minutes. Is it? What is my time? I know, but you're doing this wrap up. Like, what is my time? It says 5:28. What is my time? And so it's something that certainly we need to take a look at. But at this particular point in time, I can't support what is in front of us. I know oftentimes people make the comparison and they say things like, well, downtown they actually have on-street parking. Well, downtown in Scarborough, the streets are vastly different, and that is the uniqueness with respect to this this issue and the challenge. And most people don't think about it, but it's not one and the same. And I think at this point, I would not be supporting the motion in front of us.
Any other speakers? Councillor Lai.
Mr. Chair, can you start her time from?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, my colleagues, for giving me some of the backgrounds. As a new councillor, I was being told that some of the areas in Scarborough has this type of on-street permit parking, and now I know the background and the history of the whole thing. And this came in as a request from a new subdivision in my ward that, they have big families and, they really they have some challenges with parking on the, with small garage and, parking on the driveway and all that. And it just came to me, and I thought perhaps we can explore this. And there's in no way are we supporting rooming house in this respect. And by the way, I do have a motion, Mr. Chair, before I go on. Yeah. So basically, yeah, if you can put it on the screen, I just, because.
What's the difference? It's on the screen. Why does it have to be circulated? It's on the screen.
Just ask for it to be circulated. If you're fine with it, that's good.
It's the same thing that you were dealing with. It's on the screen.
Go ahead.
Anyways, the motion is to that this item be referred to General Manager Transportation Service for further consideration across Scarborough and report back to the Scarborough Community Council in the second quarter of 2020. This is the motion as I was hearing about the rationale and about whether this should be a Scarborough-wide. And I, as a new councillor here, I know there's some history and some background about this whole issue here, and I just wanted to flush it out and show my ward residents that this has been looked at, and whether there's pros and cons as been discussed here, and whether it would be a good thing that to introduce permit on-street parking in our Scarborough area. So basically, this is just to allow staff. The original motion was just to allow staff to determine if there's any merit in particular area or streets, and just to create some equity with the Scarborough area. So that was the intent of the original notice of motion, and I just wanted to, Mr. Chair, I wanted to see that motion, whether that will be as amended, that will work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions of the mover? Okay. Can I, you want a recorded vote? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Not carried. Just backing up, I forgot to read. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes of Scarborough Community Council meeting of January 8, 2020? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Be it that it's 10 o'clock. We have the first item that was held, SC 13.1, 1001 Ellesmere Road Common Elements Condominium Application Final Report. We don't have speakers. Should I ask if there's anybody in the room? Is there anybody that would like to make a deputation in the room? Okay. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Huh?
Yeah.
We did.
It was just a point of order. It was just the referral we said no to. We still, I believe, have the new business item on the floor.
Apologies. The main motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Not carried. SC 13.1, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the staff recommendations in this item.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. SC 13.2, 23 Glen, Watford Drive, zoning amendment and draft plan of subdivision application, final report. We have three speakers. Sheila White. Can you please come down to make your deputation? We also have Sarah Martin, followed by Adam Brown. As soon as she's finished. Ms. Martin, good morning. I'm sure you know what the procedure is. We'll give you 5 minutes, and then we'll ask you questions. Sorry.
Oh.
Sheila, sorry, Mrs. White. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to start by telling you what I'm going to tell you. I want to praise the protection for the wild bird population by requiring the special glass on the buildings. I want to ask for that you require bins on the site because construction sites are a top cause of litter. I'd like to see or have a public relations plan during construction so we as the community know who to call, and also so we can foster a personal link between the vertical communities and the residents there and the broader community. I'd like to prohibit rooftop signs facing residential areas, and I'd like to have an affordable housing dedication. So that's what I'd like to tell you. I have a 65-year relationship with Agincourt. I was born and raised, attended school, purchased a home here. For 25 years, I was involved with the C.D. Farquharson Community Association, including terms as its president. And together, this council and I saved the last heritage home remaining in our community, the Harris White House, which in part bears my family name. And professionally, I accumulated 3 decades of working experience in municipal and provincial affairs. So this application in our area marks a big change. Agincourt, once a lovely village, was gutted by CPR expropriation, mature tree cutting, train station demolition. We used to have a passenger train that got you to Union Station in 22 minutes. And that was dismantled. And there were planning mistakes of the past in the commercial and retail area, and also heritage destruction. This morning, I emailed each of you 4 photographs comparing yesteryear to today, before and after, and I'm here because of my deep attachment to the community. To read the staff report, one might think there was no history in this area prior to the arrival of the Dragon Centre. In fact, in 2019, city staff told you that the area immediately west, the North Agincourt Heritage District study, is a high priority. So can we give a nod to the genuine history of the area with a plaque to the pioneers, either on the site or somewhere in the park? Particularly Dr. C.D. Farquharson, after which our community and school are named, was instrumental in quelling an influenza outbreak. He was, in 1947, appointed as Scarborough's first full-time medical officer of health. And by 1950, Scarborough had a full-time public health program, and he also brought in hearing tests right across Scarborough and identified children who were hard of hearing for treatment. So I would love to see a plaque as part of our recognizing the heritage. Now, C.D. Farquharson community is not mentioned in the report because we're outside of the Agincourt Study District, but it is directly affected since our established subdivision rests on the south side of Shepherd Avenue across from the subject lands. So those grand towers will loom large against the backdrop of our garden parquet and the many hundreds of homes in that area. The tallest building this will be on the north side of Shepherd until DVP and Shepherd, although there are some tall condos being constructed at Pharmacy right now. And the original understanding was that all the development would occur in the Scarborough City Centre area, but that understanding and agreement are off the table now because of just the way of times have changed, and any powers the community had to fight oversized developments have essentially been stripped by subsequent legislation. So there's a flood of these applications for intense development that will assuredly be made easier with your approval of this one, but I acknowledge the writing is on the wall. Now, not everyone is in love with shiny towers lighting their horizon and sky views. They don't like their sky views being robbed. And it's interesting to note that the Council of Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat, this is a global organization for the builders of tall buildings, are having a conference coming up in Singapore. And the theme is humanizing high density, people, nature, and the urban realm. And they want to bring livability to the forefront of discourse surrounding future cities. So the way things are proceeding, my community is going to be walled in on all sides, receiving little or no direct benefit while making intense accommodations to accommodate this development. Ironically, as I said, the original deal with the old Scarborough was that high density would be concentrated in the town center area south of the 401. Now, if you're thinking NIMBY, I know it sounds like that, not in my backyard, but I also posture Hayby. How about your backyard? You know, is this something you would approve in your own backyard? Hayby. 6.2 density. Wow, that's big. Higher than densities granted at Young Shepherd and Bayview Shepherd, where there's high-speed rail transit right at the door. I remember when the maximum density was 4.5 and the height limit was 23 stories, and I know I'm dating myself. This development, I believe, is designed for cars. We already have air quality issues in our ward, according to Toronto Environmental Alliance, but the proposed Shepherd subway won't serve this site. Metrogate at Kennedy Road was built on the premise of transit hub.
Mrs. White?
And there's no
can you
hub.
please wrap up?
I will wrap up. So just getting quickly to litter control. Research confirms construction sites is one of the top 8 sources of litter in a community, but I see nothing in the staff report about requiring the control of litter, and I'd like to see this application kickstart a routine of requiring litter bins installed, used, and maintained at all building sites. I'm glad to see greening in the proposal. I applaud your protection of songbirds because the Toronto Wildlife Center says that tall buildings are the main injury
Mrs.
for
White?
songbirds.
I'll have to cut you off over here. Thank you. Any questions of the deputant? Thank you. You got questions?
Yeah, I will actually.
Councillor Lai.
Actually, I do have a comment. Thank you, Sheila, Ms. White, as a very, very a person in the community that really cares and knows a lot of history about this community. I really appreciate the time that you come here to depute. And I will take all your suggestions under advisement, and I will make sure that staff will know all these, about all the points that you've been brought to, about all these litter, about special glass, about PR on constructions, prohibiting rooftop signs, and affordable housing component. Thank you
Thank you so much, Councillor. And thank you to all of the council.
Any other? Councillor Lai? You done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, through you to Ms. White. Ms. White, good morning. Great to see you, and we know your long history of advocacy and the contributions you've made not only to the area that you reside in, but in Scarborough in general, in North York, and the City of Toronto as well. So thank you so much, and your opinions are of great value to many of us. I just wanted to make that clear. I just want to ask about the historical narrative that you have expressed wanting to create for C.D. Farquharson, who, as you've illustrated in a very short way, the great contributions that he had made to the city or to the community at the time, because we weren't one city at that time. I'm just wondering, are you prepared or to work with the local councillor and staff and your community to build that portfolio of information to reflect the historical narrative and his contribution, because I do agree with you. I think that oftentimes we lose our history, especially we have a lot of new people coming in to reside in the community and don't know and understand the history. And for those who don't understand history, so much about their future cannot be achieved, because obviously sometimes we make mistakes and we don't know, and that narrative. I think it would be very helpful. So I'm just asking, are you prepared to work with a local councillor and the community at large, and then city staff to develop something? And I see the councillor sort of nodding her head that she's prepared to work with you. Just wondering if you're prepared to do so.
Absolutely, and I have been in touch with the Scarborough Historical Society,
Right.
and they're supportive of this, and I have a dossier of research that I've done on Dr. Farquharson, and happy to share, and also of the other early pioneers like the Harrises. And,
Right.
And yes,
Thompsons.
I appreciate your support.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions of Mrs. White? Thank you. Next speaker is Sarah Martin. Ms. Martin? Whenever you're ready.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Martin, and I represent Agincourt Village Community Association. This is my first time reading. Usually it's our president who comes, so I'm here in her place. So just have a little patience with a creaky voice. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak on behalf of us and for listening to our concerns. The above proposed development falls just outside of our boundaries. However, our community will be heavily impacted by these condominium developments. Today, I'll speak only of the present and future traffic gridlock on Shepherd Avenue and the impact of the lack of efficient public transportation and connectivity. Just a little history. Just west of the proposed development on Village Green Square at Metrogate, 5 towers of 40 floors have recently been built. These 5 condominiums were built on the premise that a subway station for the Shepherd subway, which was to connect the Scarborough Civic Center, would be constructed at Metrogate. This was according to the Agincourt secondary plan. That subway station never happened. Next, a fully funded Shepherd LRT was to be built along Shepherd Avenue. That never happened. The funding was allocated to the Finch West LRT. Yes, you'll say that there is an Agincourt GO station to the west of 23 Glen Watford property. It is more than a kilometer away with the intermittent sidewalk accessibility, no bicycle lanes, TTC delayed by traffic, and no parking after 7:30 a.m. Just west of 23 Glen Watford, the proposed Agincourt Mall redevelopment with 5,000 condominium units at Kennedy Road and Shepherd Avenue is located. The traffic studies completed by this developer indicate 74% of traffic on Kennedy Road and 60% of traffic on Shepherd Avenue drives through this community. What is their destination? 401, 905 area in the north and 905 area in the east. Our community is a drive-through. According to the 42 Police Division, Kennedy Road, Shepherd Avenue is identified as one of 3 of the highest accident rate for vehicles and pedestrians every month in all of the 42 Division. What will happen when you add many more residents to the immediate area that has traffic congestion, lacks safe pedestrian pathways, cycle lanes, and efficient public transportation connectivity? Why are Scarborough North residents treated differently than Leslie and Shepherd residents, where the Concord Place condominiums are being built after 2 subway stations? Bessarion and Leslie subway stations, as well as Oriole GO station, are already in place. Why are Scarborough North residents treated differently than Don Mills and Shepherd residents, where the increase of condominiums happened after the Don Mills subway station was in place? Why are Scarborough North residents treated differently than Bayview Shepherd residents, where the increase of condominiums happened after the Bayview subway station was in place? Why does Scarborough have only 2 subway stations, while North York has 20 subway stations? According to the 2016 census, Scarborough population is only slightly less than North York. The negative mobility impacts of more condominium developments along Shepherd Avenue and the existing community, as well as on future residents, are tremendous. My focus today has only been on the need for improved public transportation, pedestrian and cyclist connectivity to each traffic gridlock. We are strongly appealing to Scarborough councillors to direct city planning to plan and build the Shepherd subway along Shepherd Avenue before authorizing more condominium development at 23 Glen Watford Avenue. We, the residents, implore to you, the councillors, to ensure that Shepherd subway connect to Don Mills subway, ensure that Shepherd subway connected to Don Mills subway, Stouffville corridor, GO Smart Track, and proposed 3-stop subway at McCowan Avenue. As well, safe pedestrian cyclist community access needs to be in place before any authorization of more condominium development. Thank you very much for your time for us to express Agincourt community concerns regarding mobility within and throughout the Scarborough North community.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Any questions of Sarah Martin? Thank you, appreciate it. And the next folks to make deputation, it's Adam Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of council. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, and I wanted to thank the speakers for some of their comments. And I go way back, and I remember Ms. White and all her contributions to the municipality, so I thank her for those comments, and would say at the outset, as well as the residents, that in terms of any discussions about those issues that were raised, my client would be happy to have those discussions as well and see if we can respond to them. So that's just a comment about those comments made. In terms of this proposal, it's been in the works for just over 7 years, and it's actually a process that's been a very good one. It's been a good one because with the direction of city staff, they've asked us quite some time ago to work on a public road, not a private road, that leads then to the park at the end of the road, which we've done in concert with the property owner that abuts. So that's been a positive response. There has also been excellent input into some of the noise mitigation measures from the surrounding industries that we made sure were applied, which actually takes the density up because you've enclosed balconies to ensure those proper noise mitigation measures are included. As part of the 2 community information meetings, there was been reductions in the overall unit count and the overall density and the overall height of the development. And in addition, some of the positive comments you heard today are the landscaping improvements that have made to the site and surrounding area, which again came about as a result of a very cooperative effort by city staff and the community input and our clients' consultants. In addition to that, as part of the end of the process, there has been an agreement by our client for a Section 37 community benefit package up to $1.7 million. That would include the revitalization of the Agincourt Park. There'll be grading, sodding, fencing, and trees, as well as other improvements in that park, and funding to improve accessibility to the Agincourt Recreation Center. So this is all in all, while it's been a long process, it hasn't been long because of any negative input at any stage of the process. It's all been positive, and I want to thank city staff for their input throughout the process in bringing forward now what is a final report that my client completely supports in terms of the recommendations. And again, we'd be happy to have discussions later with Sheila and the residents associations about any other issues they have. I can also tell you that in terms of traffic, your traffic engineers reviewed the reports that we had put in, including the addendum reports. And in fact, because it's going from commercial to residential, the overall impact is a difference of about 3%, 10 to 12 cars in the AM and PM peak time. So while I understand everywhere in the city traffic's an issue and everybody wants subways, this one has a very minimal impact on traffic. And subject to any questions, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Councillor Lai.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for your comments. And I just have a couple of questions. I read in the report there's no bicycle parking in the proposed building. Is that correct?
No, we have bicycle parking. Let me just get
How
the
many?
number.
You do, right? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
That's good enough. I just want to make sure that you do have that. And what about the?
380.
How many?
380 bicycle parking spaces. 421, actually it increased,
421?
correct.
Okay.
Oh, right, 380 residents, 41 visitors, for a total of 421, my mistake. 421 bicycle parking.
Okay, thank you. The other question I'd like to ask is, do you have any affordable housing component in these two buildings?
We don't. This application began back in 2012, and so those policies back then weren't asking for the affordable units. At the end of the day, I won't say they're, in this day and age, I never say market affordable anymore because of the prices, but at least a lot more affordable than other areas of the city with some of the development that's happening based on the locational attributes.
I see, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions of the deputant? I have a question, if I may. How many units we been proposing?
551 units.
How many, now, is there going to be a component there of retail?
No, no retail. We have 566 parking spaces.
Sorry, how many parking spaces?
566.
So you're allowing 10% above, like one per unit plus 10% above, close to 10%?
Yeah, we're assuming about 484 for residents, 82 for visitors. So we'll have, you don't typically get a full uptake on the residential parking, and we have the opportunity to build more if we had to.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Thank you. Is anybody else in the room? Nope, okay. Questions of staff? Questions of staff? Yes. Councillor Lai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For question for staff, this site is designated as Class 4 noise area, and do you expect any noise issues on this site?
Through the chair, I'll direct these questions to staff.
Through the chair, Councillor, the recommendation before you is to classify the area as a Class 4 noise area per provincial guidelines. The reason for that is just south of the subject lands, there's a significant industrial presence, and by designating a Class 4 area, that allows for both at the condominium mitigation to be built into the condominium and not necessarily have the industrial presence bear the burden of sound mitigation. And those reports were prepared conjunctly between the industrial entity and the applicant, and were signed off on by both their noise consultants and accepted by the city.
So all these concerns are being mitigated then about the noise with this application?
So the specific noise mitigation features are being recommended to be secured as a legal convenience through development agreements, at first the Section 37 agreement, and ultimately implemented through site plan control.
Okay. How many units did the applicant originally apply for?
Through the chair, so the application has gone through a couple iterations. They originally came in with 650 units, which was subsequently reduced to 640, and the current proposal before the council is for 551 units.
So, and how many stories was the original application?
Through the chair, the original applications were for 2 towers of 31 and 34 stories, which have been reduced to 2 28-story towers.
I see. And how many community consultations were being held?
Through the chair, 2 community consultation meetings were held in 2013 and 2017, and there was a expanded notification area for both community meetings.
We heard a lot about this traffic issue. Are those traffic issues being dealt with in this the latest application?
Yep. Through the chair, so there were a couple traffic impact studies that were submitted as part of the submission requirements, and our transportation services staff have reviewed those studies, and the conclusions for the studies were that the intersections would continue to operate at acceptable levels of service.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions of staff? Okay, speakers. Councillor Lai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as we heard, this application has taken 7 years, and even if it was before the time that I become a councillor. So I think we do need to move forward, and a lot of times we need to anticipate and have, to the needs of the resident. We understand that there's a lot of intensification on the Shepherd Avenue, but I think this is the first actually. Development in Ward 23, and then we are able to net about $1.7 million in community benefits that we really do need very badly in our ward to improve the area. So I would support the recommendation that is being put forward by staff, and also I really thank staff for doing a great job over the 7 years, and finally we've done a lot of tweaking on the application, and now that we are coming to this, and I look forward to working with staff to make sure that this is going. We need to manage the development as good as we can, and really appreciate all these community members that came out and speak up and trying to make sure that we manage this development in the best way that we can. Thank you.
Are you moving staff recommendations?
And having said that, I will move staff recommendation.
Any further speakers? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Thompson, you held item SC 13.321 Lawrence Avenue East zoning bylaw amendment preliminary application.
Yes, I did, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much.
Just think, do we have anybody in the room that would like to make a deputation on this? No? Okay. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few questions of staff. This report is amending an application that was in front of us some time ago. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. The application is proposing to create new zoning, essentially revising zoning that was established by council in July of 2018. The permission at that time was for 286 dwelling units on the property. The current proposal is seeking to bring that up to 429 units.
Is there any changes then? There's Building A, Building B, and the townhouses. Is that correct? As on the site?
Yes, through the chair, this is a perspective of the current proposal, and it is very similar to the proposal approved in 2018. On Lawrence Avenue, we have what's called Building A with a height of 21 stories. On Birchmount Road, we have Building B at a height of 7 stories. Those heights and building massings are essentially unchanged in the current application. The previous approval provided for 3 blocks of townhouses. 2 of the blocks have now been consolidated into 1 block of townhouses, and there is a slight reduction in the number of townhouse units specifically proposed.
Are there any impact to Lawrence Avenue as it relates to any entrances off of Lawrence? As that, because in the past, Dulverton was basically the entrance onto the site. Is still being maintained?
Yes, the sole site access will be off Dulverton as previously approved. There are no accesses proposed off Birchmount or Lawrence.
Right. And so part of what's actually happening here with this site is the unit count has increased, size of those units have decreased. Would that be a fair statement?
Through the chair, that's quite correct. One aspect of the current proposal is to introduce 25% of the units as studio or bachelor apartments. Units of that smaller size were not part of the 2018 proposals. But 2 and 3 bedroom units are also being significantly reduced in floor area.
Right. Is there a retail component on this site?
There had been in the previous approvals, but there is currently no retail. It had been proposed in the base of Building A, and that is now all intended to be private space for the residents and no retail.
We had seen that there would have been some impact and some great challenges with respect to retail at that site. Would I be correct in terms of that assessment? And would you concur that there were challenges with respect to retail, particularly on the fact that on the southwest corner, there has been a building there for quite some time and the retail has not been successful there?
Well, certainly there had been, under the previous proposal, direct connectivity to the street in terms of business entrances off the sidewalk. So there would have been good pedestrian accessibility into the retail, but anybody having to drive to the site to access any of those ground floor services would have to come in off the driveway on Delverton and basically access underground parking. So that is a constraint in terms of retail commercial business viability on a site like this.
Right. Are you aware that all the units have essentially been sold to date? All 429 units?
I've only just heard that.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
Right, okay. So I'd like to ask, and I know in your recommendation, I think your recommendation 2 talks about the, recommendation 2 talks about the notification area and so on of 120 meters. But then you have something new in this, which is I really hadn't seen before. And it goes on to say that, and to additional residents, institution, and owners to be determined in consultation with the ward councillor with any additional mailing costs to be borne by the applicant. That part is sort of standard. But would you have a problem if I made a motion today and basically extend the notification area to about 300 meters? I know we could discuss it offline, but 300 meters.
Yes, through the chair, I understand. I've mentioned this to the applicant. They understand that you'd like to go to 300 meters, and I believe they're in agreement with that.
No, we're good. We're good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm good. Thanks.
Any further questions of staff?
Oh, Mr. Chair, can I just ask one quick question?
By all means.
Just one quick question.
Well-
The alignment with respect to Dulverton, that intersection there on the map with the street to the north, that's in line with respect to the entrance into the site? No, another guy. Yeah. No, they have people working for them. Yeah.
Through the chair, yes, the current site access is directly opposite Beacon Road.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Any further questions of staff? All right, speakers. Councillor Thompson.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank the staff. I've been working on this application for quite some time. This had gone through a number of iterations and so on, and apparently it's much more in keeping in terms of the desires and intention of those who are interested in living in the community. We want to animate the intersection of Lawrence and Birchmount. It has been dormant for a good period of time to the west, northwest corner. That's been animated, more people living in, and it's becoming a really, I'll use the term, cool place for people, and also the surrounding area. More eyes on the streets, more eyes in the community, and so on. We've had meetings regarding this site prior, and it was well received. The applicants have gone back and reduced the size. I only became aware that the fact that all the units were sold recently because someone reached out to me and asked if they could buy 5 units there. They wanted to be in touch with the applicant, and we gave the contact information and so on. And I learned from that individual that when they attempted to purchase some units there, they were told that there were no units available. So that's a really good thing in terms of bringing more people in the community and so on. And so obviously, we're going to go through the process. I want to see the extension of the notification area. I didn't ask this question, but I did talk to staff earlier this morning. In as much as there is not going to be any retail component part, what I've asked staff to do in terms of speaking with the applicant, I'd like to see that we have some community amenities there, amenity space for things like maybe an incubator, accelerator, something for the arts and cultural sector and so on. I think that'd be very helpful in the community because that's more in keeping with some of the needs that are in the area. So I'd like to ask staff to review and have that discussion with the applicant to see what we could do there. Otherwise, I'm very pleased with this, and I know that we'll have this community meeting at a date to be determined, and we can move forward with this because everything else is being the same. The size of the building has not changed. The footprint has not changed. They have just reconfigured with respect to looking at the needs of the community. So I'm moving the staff recommendations are here. Looking forward to having such meeting at the appropriate time.
Any further speakers? All right. Councillor Thompson has moved staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. SC 13.4, 2740 Lawrence Avenue East, zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision application preliminary report. Councillor Thompson, you have the item.
I did. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, through you to staff, if you can just maybe give us a quick 2-minute
Questions of staff?
overview. Just a quick overview as to the site itself. This is the David and Mary Thompson site, is that correct?
Sorry for the delay. Through the chair, yes, this is, this application at 2740 Lawrence Avenue East is
respect
the
your time.
site of the former David and Mary Thompson Collegiate Institute.
Okay. So we're going to have a daycare that area. Plus we have the extended park, the additional acre of land that we've acquired from the school board, and the additional acres that they're kicking in as part of a community space. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right.
Through
So-
the chair, there will be additional parkland contribution to build on the previous parkland dedication.
Right. What I wanted to understand, there's a roadway that's going to be constructed. Will that roadway be in line with respect to the grocery store on the opposite side? There's a traffic signal there now. Just wondering whether or not they'll be in line, or is there an offset? And if in fact there is an offset, how will we be able to set it so that it is concurrent in terms of flowing in a way that allows for maximum safety?
Through the chair, just very briefly, I've just put up the overhead of the proposed plan of subdivision, and the primary site access into the subdivision would be a new public street on the west side of the David and Mary Thompson site today, and it would be a P-loop configuration. And to give that some context, this is a screenshot of the current condition. This is the location of the new public street. What you're seeing here is the parking lot of the former high school, but the new public street would be northerly off Lawrence Avenue at this location. On the south side, where we have the food store, we have the driveway offset to the west. So in terms of creation of a new intersection here, there is discussion that we are having with Transportation Services and the applicant in terms of the potential to relocate the commercial access a bit easterly to line it up better into the new intersection configuration.
Okay. With respect to the notification, are you okay with also extending it to 300 meters?
Through the chair, I would have no concern with that, and in part because, to their credit, the applicant has already reached out to the community,
Right.
the larger community, and had a public open house for them, and I think it would be appropriate to include those residents primarily to the north.
Yes. The Midland Park
St.
Community
Andrews,
Association.
Midland Park,
And St. Andrews.
and St. Andrews as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Those are all my questions at this point, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions of staff?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Councilor.
My apologies. I don't know if this is through you, Mr. Hines, or to another staff members. There was an issue with respect to sewage or connections, sewage connections and so on. Can you tell me what is actually happening there? There's a request that's made to the applicant to allow for individual connections. What is the rationale for that?
Through Mr. Chair. So currently, I think there are no sewers fronting this site on Lawrence Avenue.
Yeah.
There are sewers at the east corner. Sewers end somewhere here. So, and the client.
Sorry, that's going to the east?
Yeah, just
Okay,
to the east.
fair enough. Okay, I
And
just
there are
want-
no sewers in this area.
Okay,
So currently, the client is proposing to have the sewers through this easement
Okay.
along the property between the two houses. And based on our current policy, we don't prefer to have the sewers going through an easement between the two houses. So our preference in discussion with Toronto Water is that we should have sewer extended over here on Lawrence and goes down to the street. So every sewer is being maintained in the public right of way. So we don't have any issues in maintenance in future.
oh, I see. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions of staff? Okay, speakers. Councilor Thompson.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the staff recommendation, of course, with the amendment to recommendation number 2, where we will delete 120 meters and then substitute that number to 300 meters.
Councilor, if I may ask, would you want us to give you the latitude to expand on that with your?
No, that's okay.
You're-
Sorry, because
all right.
we have the community association is captured within the
Okay.
300
No
meters.
problem.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair. And they then extend their own notification, so that's helpful. I just wanted to just add, like, this is a really good development, great utilization of the site, David and Mary Thompson, and we have talked about developing a heritage or a historical narrative on the site about the school, the contribution of the Thompson families, the first families in Scarborough. No relations. They spell theirs without a P, mine has a P. Some
mean,
will
you added
say
P.
mine's a wet one and there is a dry one. So just saying what people have said. And so initially there was talk about, mid-rise and high-rises and so on. The community did not want that. This developer has come in and made a proposal for single detached family homes in the area, and we're going to see more parkland, more daycare, and so on. And so we're quite pleased with this development and looking forward to the community meeting to have further discussion on this. Then thank the staff for the great work. Mr. Hines, thank you.
No relations, you pay? All right. Any further speakers? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed, carried. SC 13.5, 860 Pharmacy Avenue, 9 to 40 Craigton Drive, and 1 Rannock Street. Official plan amendment application preliminary report. Councilor Thompson, you held the item.
I did. Thank you very much, Mr.
Questions
Chair.
of staff?
Yes, I do. Just maybe start, Tom, thank you. I wonder if you could just perhaps put up a diagram showing the area specifically that is being highlighted in this report?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the overall area or the site itself with the adjacent context?
The site itself with the adjacent context. Thanks. Right. And so the area now, Craigton and Rannock, has a number of low-rise rental units. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. There are 8 3.5-story rental units with 248 rental units.
Right. And so the proposal is to demolish those units and to put in basically new structures. Is that correct?
That is correct, through you, Mr. Chair.
And what are our policies and provisions to protect the interests of the residents that are there now who are renting? What's the policy imperative there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so there's the rental replacement policy, and there's a process that has to be followed. So the units themselves would be replaced as part of the redevelopment, and there is a process whereby there is notification to those residents, and they would have an opportunity to potentially return, so the right of return, and there's a process that is followed for that.
And a return at the same rent that they left?
Correct.
Right.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
All right. And so this is not normal in the sense that you see an application to demolish and to develop the number of structures that we see there. And I don't actually have, I had the numbers earlier, but what are the heights that that's being asked here? And what's the rationale? This is associated with the Golden Mile development, secondary plan going across from Victoria Park to Birchmount Road?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Right.
So this is in an area that is essentially transition, so it's slightly away from Eglinton, so not adjacent to Eglinton, does not have frontage onto Eglinton, and it's designated apartment neighborhoods. So it's considered a transition area as part of the Golden Mile Secondary Plan study. The heights that are being proposed through this application range from 9 to 34 stories. There's a total of 3 buildings with several towers.
And we would be looking at the necessary Section 37 and other community benefits and so on as a result of this application as part of the process?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that would be part of the discussion, yes.
Right. And given the nature to the area to the north, I know there's a hydro corridor there, and then beyond that is the single-family dwelling. How does this particular location compare to other areas in the city? We've seen similar type of transition areas in the development that has advanced in those areas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there have been some other areas, yes.
Right. And transit, and I guess that my final question to you is that, do you think part of the desire to redevelop or to create as part of this transition process, is this as a result of the transit that's actually coming into the community? Do you think otherwise, and again, I'm asking for your opinion, I don't know, do you think, had you, for example, been asked prior to the transit piece or discussion to look at this or as a potential redevelopment site, what role do you think transit plays in this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and this would be my professional opinion and personal as well, the proximity to the 5 LRT stops associated within the Eglinton Crosstown in this location, I think has certainly increased interest in redevelopment of this site for the landowner.
Thank you. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Anybody else, questions of staff? All right. Speakers?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I would just move the staff recommendations here, and I want to thank the staff for the great work that has been done. There's been a lot of work that's being done in this area. This is the Golden Mile and certainly the extension to the north, and both Councillor Crawford and our areas are greatly impacted, and I know there's a lot of discussions and work that's actually going on in terms of the transformation that is going to take place in this particular area. It's going to be a long time, but nonetheless, we need to set the table for a really positive and a well-thought-out, well-planned development. In fact, one of the things that I'm doing, and I've discussed this matter with Councillor Crawford and the mayor, we're bringing in some folks from Copenhagen, because in my last visit there, we had a chance to see how they have developed the Carlsberg, former Carlsberg brewery or beer factory site. And just to do a charrette with both our senior planning staff here, I've also discussed this with Mr. Lintern, as well as the community at large, to ensure that we get this right. And I know that the staff here have done an amazing job in terms of the work that they've done to date. and will continue to do. And this is really exciting. It's an exciting opportunity for the community, and it's an exciting opportunity for Scarborough in general and the city because of the transit component that has been introduced, and that has spurred a lot of interest in terms of development and also investment in the community. We will see approximately 40, just under 50,000 new people in the area, 19,000 plus jobs, amenity spaces right along the corridor, accelerators, space for cultural, as well as all of the hubs and other community facilities that are there. We'll see new built forms put in place, retail, grocery stores, and so on. So I'm really excited about this, and I want to thank the staff for the work that's being done to date, and I look forward to working to ensure that the residents are not displaced and that their interests are considered. And we have policies that deals with that with respect to the rental component and so on. So I want to thank the staff for the great work. Thank you.
Any further speakers? Okay, we have a motion to move staff recommendations. All those in favor? Recorded vote. All those in favor? Councillor Crawford, Councillor Ainsley, Councillor Karygiannis, Councillor Lai, Councillor Thompson, unanimous. SC 13.9 was deferred. SC 13.12, that was held by Councillor Thompson. This is where I have the conflict. Councillor Ainsley, would you please fill in?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Councillor Thompson, you held this item. Do you have
Yes.
questions of staff?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 2, you did the analysis, and this doesn't meet the warrant. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
And what's the basis of a warrant?
So the warrants are based on the total approach volume for the intersection, as well as the vehicle and pedestrian volume crossing the other major road. So when you have an all-way stop, you've got two roads that are approaching each other. It's based on the approach volume from both of those angles.
And I'm not sure if you know, I don't know, so I'm asking the question because I'd like to be informed. How long has this process in terms of the warrants, in terms of the derivation of the warrants, when were they first conceived?
Through the chair, I'm going to have to defer that to our traffic operations.
Do we know? Maybe before you were born.
Yeah, through you, Councillor, they've been in place for many,
time.
many years.
Yeah.
They were updated recently as part of the Vision Zero review, where we've added increased weight to the presence of pedestrians. So we've doubled the representation of pedestrians in the warrant. So each pedestrian counts as two in terms of meeting the warrant.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, thank you. In the report, it talks about the cost to install the all-way stop. We're talking about 2 stops plus 4 no parking signs with posts and so on. And is there marking as well at the area?
So through the chair, when installing a typical all-way stop control, you have to take into account also pedestrian movements on all 4 legs of the intersection. So that could include civil modifications to the depressed curbs on the corners. So construction on each 4 corners, pavement markings, as well as the actual signage.
So when you say depressed curbs, is that making it easier for people, for example, with mobility issues and so on, walking? Are you?
Through the yes, that is where pedestrians can drop down from the sidewalk and the changing grade to the road to the crossing.
Okay, so that would be part of the expense associated with, and that cumulatively, that would be the rationale for a $10,000 cost.
Through the chair, that is correct, and that is an approximate $10,000 cost. It varies depending on the actual contract prices we receive a year for when that actually gets installed.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are all my questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none. Speakers, Councillor Thompson, you have this item?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the staff for the report. The recommendation that's actually here is to not authorize. I'm going to ask that we authorize the all-way compulsory stop in this particular area. I recognize the analysis that's been done on page 2, and I recognize the comments that's been made with staff, but I think it's really important. This is actually a fairly busy area, as I understand it. I know this area quite well. I was concerned about the $10,000 cost. I didn't understand what was involved fully in that. Mr. Brown has been very helpful in terms of my understanding and clarification, and I think it's monies well spent to ensure the health and safety and welfare of our residents, and I think $10,000 is a small amount to pay to ensure that residents and particularly children who actually use this area. There are a number of young people living in this area and young families and so on, and I think that it gives them comfort and peace of mind, and so I'd like to suggest that we authorize the all-way stop in this particular area, because I know that a lot of people come in from sort of Victoria Park and then the North York side, and they just kind of, if you will, sail through the area. We want to obviously ensure that people can stop in order to minimize any occurrences that could potentially happen in the future.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. We have a motion on the floor. Any questions of the mover? Saying none, all in favor of the motion? Recorded vote, okay. There's been a request for a recorded vote. All in favor, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Ainsley, Councillor Lai, Councillor Thompson. That's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. And Councillor Karygiannis, I'm returning the chair to you.
Thank you, Councillor Ainsley. I really appreciate it. And we're now... Paul. Item SC 13.14, traffic calming speed bumps, 30-kilometer speed limit, and U-turn prohibition, Corinthian Boulevard. I held it in my name. An opportunity to circulate the motion. Councillor, I want to circulate it. This is in front of any questions of staff. Okay. Can we put the motion up again, please? This is, speakers, since I held the item, I'll get a chance to speak. This is in front of a school. This is a school that attracts hundreds of kids. It's 7-8. I believe the school has about 500 children. It is close to Pharmacy Avenue, right next door to it. There's 3 schools in that area, and one of the reasons that in working with the principal and the community, we asked for a report, and the report has come back, and I'm moving the changes. Although in my ward, we all declare that all the local streets will be 30, I mean, this is something which is repetitive. I'm asking that we allow for speed humps to be allowed between Corinthian and Pharmacy and waive the polling requirements. Any questions?
So it's actually on Pharmacy Avenue?
No, this is on Corinthian.
Okay, which is just across from Tom.
Collingsbrook. No, it's above Sir John A. MacDonald.
Right, just north of.
Just north of. Yep. All right, no questions. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item SC 13.16, traffic control signal review, Lawrence Avenue East and Meadowvale. We do have a speaker, and if Denise, sorry ma'am, if you can come down and please.
Thank you for this opportunity to address the Scarborough Council. I'd like to just direct your attention to the screen that has a little map that I've put together last night. As the old saying goes, a picture speaks 1,000 words. So basically what we're asking is for a traffic control signal to be installed at the intersection of Meadowvale Road and Lawrence Avenue. It's a T intersection with a bus stop on the south side of Lawrence. So the only way to access that bus stop is for a pedestrian to cross 7 lanes of traffic at that point. So basically, it is set up to create jaywalking. We want to contribute to Vision Zero of the city's plan. So right here, along this stretch of Lawrence Avenue, there is 1.7 kilometers with no traffic control signal whatsoever. And I'm guilty of this myself, where I pick up speed along this long stretch of road. Right at that intersection, as I mentioned, there are 7 lanes of traffic just west of Meadowvale and 6 lanes of traffic just east of Meadowvale on Lawrence Avenue. And very importantly, there's an elementary school that goes from JK to grade 6, so very young children that are going to school 250 meters up from Lawrence Avenue. Now, this is a French language school which attracts students from a large community around, a large diameter around the school. So there are families that do take the TTC and staff that take the TTC to get here, which is, again, encouraging a lot of jaywalking. The school children themselves go on regular trips, field trips, so they end up taking the GO train. They all have to cross the street. This whole issue came to light because the principal mentioned that sometimes she plays mother hen, and she stands and stops traffic on Lawrence Avenue as the kids have to cross safely to get to the bus stop to get over to the GO train station. So the staff has very kindly recommended that this traffic signal be approved. Even though it may not meet all the technical requirements, this is a common sense safety requirement that I wanted to come and present and ask for Scarborough Council to approve and take it to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bacon. Anybody have any questions of the deputant? Okay, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Councillor McKelvey has asked that we move staff recommendations. I'm doing it on her behalf. All those in favor, any questions? Nope. Okay, questions of staff? Staff supports. Well, sure enough, okay. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We're done. Okay. Members, we've reached the end of our agenda, but before we close, I do want to make one comment. We realize that this will be Mr. Sullivan's last council meeting. He's been with us for 30-plus years. 36. I'm going to start a petition that we draft him, that he doesn't leave us. I want on all our behalf to thank him for his service. I know my office and myself couldn't do without him, and I'm sure that you all have the same comments and sentiments. Mr. Sullivan, we wish you all the best. If you're going to be going somewhere fishing, please let us know. Some of us might want to wear our long boots and get our fishing rods out and come and join you. All the best, sir, to you and your family, and may this part of the next chapter of your life be just as pleasant, if not more pleasant and memorable. And on behalf of the city, we thank you for your service, and on behalf of Scarborough, we really appreciate what you've done with us. Thank you again, sir. Yes, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you very much. When are you leaving, Scott?
February 29th, my official.
Oh.
Friday, it's a leap year, so my retirement will be.
We are suspending leap years this year, so you can't leave. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add to your comments, and you know, it's a collaboration of activities and interests and contribution in terms of what it takes to really make the city work. We are part of that as councillors, and the staff and all the other groups of people that really work to make this great city work. And I just really wanted to say to Mr. Sullivan, thank you, thank you, thank you. We, in my office, and Ihor in my office, we've had, and all of us have had a great working relationship with you. You have brought on many occasions common sense to what was matters that seeming to be turning into a bit of a challenge, I'll use that word, and you have been able to steadily help with respect to your staff and your team and so on in terms of handling those on behalf of our residents. Because really, at the end of the day, we all work for the residents in the city. And you have not only been thoughtful, but resourceful, resilient in terms of wanting to bring solutions to matters that have been problematic for many of my constituents. And I really wanted to publicly laud you in your actions and your activities. As you move on to the next chapter or chapters in your life moving on, I want to, on behalf of our team, wish you well. I have no doubt that whatever you decide to do moving forward, you will do it as professionally and as efficiently and as thoughtfully as you've done it here. And I think that wherever you land after your fishing days are over, because I don't think you can fish forever, there is so much more that you have to contribute. The 36 years here have been extremely invaluable to all of us and been well spent. So I wish you good health, you and your family, and you're young enough to enjoy it. So I think that's a model that we should all be looking forward to in terms of our ability to leave an area and move on to something else with our youthfulness about us, to be able to continue to enjoy and to contribute in making a difference in your community. I have no doubt that you'll be doing that. So again, from us to you, thank you very much, because we've had a strong working relationship. I just wanted to emphasize that. Thank you on behalf of my constituents.
But you do realize that we might yank you back and present you with something in the future. We might just bring you back just for that. Thank you. Do you want to say a couple of words?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
We're all ears. It's very emotional. So.
Just keep the cell number just in case we want to get in touch with you. Can I please ask Councillor Ainsley to move the motions to introduce and pass general bills and to introduce and pass confirmatory bill?
Sure. That Scarborough Community Council passed and declares bylaws bills 138 to 143 prepared for the February 5th, 2020 meeting number 13 of the Community Council.
All those in favor? Opposed? Pass.
One more. My next motion, I would like to move that Scarborough Community Council pass and declares a bylaw, a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Scarborough Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting number 13 on February 5th, 2020.
Thank you, everybody, and to all a good day.
Don't we need to vote on it? Jim?
Now, can I have Councillor Ainsley, your words were so amazing. I just forgot to ask for all those in favor. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.